Yeah. The gala is coming up on April 29th. It's on a Wednesday night, and you do need to purchase tickets for that, and you can't just show up for it. We actually have to know to tell the place to have the right amount of food and plates for and tables and all the fancy stuff that goes with it. And it is also a formal event. I know, shocking. Like I'm not sure when the last time I had a formal thing on was, so we've kind of buffered ourselves from that. And so we'll get to see what some of you look like cleaned up. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. We're just beginning now the rollout of our 25-year anniversary celebration. So you're going to be seeing some faces and some stories, a blast from the past as we come up. And for those of you that are new here, you're going to be kind of filled in on the last 25 years. So it'll be a great time as we go. A few years ago, I got an email from a friend. They were asking me a series of rather odd questions. They didn't really make sense to me. It had the tone of someone that was trying to set me up. It was odd, and so I read a little further, and I noticed that they had placed a chain of emails below the email they sent me by accident. In fact, it was a forward of a series of conversations that they were having with somebody who, prior to that moment, I did not know was an enemy of mine. I did not even know I was important enough to have an enemy. Check. Important enough to have an enemy. Okay, so an unknown enemy of mine, but they had accidentally sent me the whole forward of the emails. Which was great. So I had an interesting response to that email, and I never heard from them again. But my friend had gotten sucked into a conspiracy against me, and they were taking the trust that I had placed in them, and they betrayed me, or were trying to betray me. So I thought, wow, that's interesting. It's not fun being betrayed. It's not fun when you place trust in somebody and they violate that trust. I think we all know that it feels bad when someone betrays you. In America, we have this thing where we call people like a Benedict Arnold if they do something that you don't look traitorous towards you. Benedict Arnold, maybe you heard of it, that phrase or his name, but it's because at the start of the American Revolution, Benedict Arnold was an American hero. He was a brilliant general, fought bravely several battles. But by the end of the war, he was commanding troops for the other side, the British forces. What happened was he had become a turncoat or a traitor because he got embittered about what he saw was a lack of recognition for his military genius. Arnold actually offered West Point to the British for 20,000 pounds, proceeded to systematically weaken the defenses of the fort overlooking the Hudson River in New York State. But the plot quickly unraveled. Arnold ran away, escaped on a British ship where he was then given command of the British troops to fight against America. After the war, he and his wife went to England where he died, the most famous traitor in American history. Not a popular man on the American side. I imagine he was pretty popular in Britain, but on our side, he wasn't particularly popular. Think about the idea of somebody that betrays. In the Bible, we have like signature betrayals as well. Many people think of Judas. Judas, who betrayed Jesus for money, is one of history's greatest betrayals. If somebody calls you a Judas, it's not a compliment. I think it was serious. It was a serious betrayal. But honestly, I think we had a sense that it might happen. There's another betrayal in the Bible that I think is probably the most signature betrayal. Just before Jesus was standing trial to be executed, there is an event that occurs that goes down as one of the most difficult relationship betrayals in the Bible. The betrayal that I view as the most significant is Peter's betrayal. You see, Peter was one of the most fiercely loyal leaders that Jesus had personally mentored. And at Jesus' most vulnerable moment, Peter denies Jesus as if he had never even known him. I'm quite confident that the denial from Peter was the most painful part or one of the most painful parts of all the beatings that Jesus received. One author wrote this. He said, "It's easier to forgive an enemy than to forgive a friend." Because you haven't trusted an enemy, right? You've trusted a friend. If you've ever betrayed a friend, or if you've ever been betrayed by a friend, you know how much pain it causes. It's difficult. So in Mark chapter 14, pay attention to what happens with Peter. Peter said to Jesus, "Even if everyone else deserts you, I never will." Then Jesus goes to pray, and he took Peter, James, and John with him, and he became deeply troubled and distressed. He told them, "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here, keep watch with me." Then he returned and found the disciples asleep. So much for what Jesus had just said. He said to Peter, Simon, which is his other name, "Are you asleep? Couldn't you watch with me for even 1 hour?" After this, Jesus is arrested and stands trial. Meanwhile, Peter followed him at a distance. Somebody say at a distance. Just remember that. And went right into the high priest's courtyard. There he sat with the guards, warming himself by the fire. The trial proceeds. Meanwhile, Peter was in the courtyard below. One of the servant girls who worked for the high priest came by, noticed Peter warming himself at the fire. She looked at him closely and said, "You were one of those with Jesus of Nazareth." But Peter denied it. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, and he went into the entryway. Just then, a rooster crowed. When the servant girl saw him standing there, she began telling others, "This man is definitely one of them." But Peter denied it again. A little later, some of the bystanders confronted Peter and said, "You must be one of them because you are a Galilean." Peter swore, "A curse on me if I'm lying. I don't know about this man you are talking about." And immediately, the rooster crowed the second time. Suddenly, Jesus' words flashed through Peter's mind. "Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times, that you even know me." And he broke down and wept. Peter, you got to understand this, Peter, the hand-picked leader of the whole movement that Jesus was building. Peter betrays his mentor. Peter betrays Jesus at the hardest moment in Jesus' life. I want you to think about this idea. How does somebody go from being the hand-picked choice to lead by Jesus and yet betrays him? How does that happen? And I want us to look close at this. I want you to look at what happened to Peter. Where did things go wrong? What was the driver behind all of this nonsense? Because if we understand what happened, maybe we can avoid making some of those mistakes. And it goes all the way back to Mark 8. In Mark chapter 8, Jesus began to tell them that the Son of Man must suffer many terrible things and be rejected by the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of the religious law. Talking about himself, Jesus said he would be killed, but 3 days later, he would rise from the dead. Seems pretty simple, like plain, obvious what Jesus is saying. As he talked about this openly with his disciples, watch what Peter does. Peter took Jesus aside and began to reprimand him. Just to be clear, Peter is reprimanding Jesus for saying such things. Jesus turned around, looked at his disciples, then reprimanded Peter. "Get away from me, Satan," he said. "You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's." When Jesus calls you Satan, not a good day. Not a good day. We already know a few things. We know that Peter loves Jesus when this is happening. But even though he loves Jesus, he cannot accept that his Messiah would suffer and die. Peter is on Team Jesus, but on some level he's on Team Jesus because he thinks that Jesus is going to overthrow the Roman Empire. He can accept a victorious Messiah, but Peter's having a hard time accepting a crucified Messiah. Peter's on Team Jesus as long as it makes sense to what he's thinking. And I'm afraid that happens to a lot of people today, where you you're on Team Jesus as long as Team Jesus does what you want it to do. So long before the betrayal in the courtyard, Peter was already resisting the cross that Christ would have to suffer on. Then in Mark chapter 9, Jesus predicts his death and resurrection, once again. For he wanted to spend more time with his disciples and teach them. He said to them, the Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of his enemies. He will be killed, but 3 days later he will rise from the dead. Again, seems fairly simple to understand. Verse 32, they didn't understand what he was saying. However, they were afraid to ask him what he meant. After they arrived at Capernaum, which is the town where they were based out of, and settled in a house, Jesus asked his disciples, what were you discussing on the road? But they didn't answer because they had been arguing about which one of them was the greatest. He sat down, called the 12 disciples over to him and said, whoever wants to be first must take last place and be the servant of everyone else. Here, you have Peter, along with the rest, still trying to decide who was going to get the most political power when Rome was overthrown. The reason they didn't understand what Jesus was saying was because it didn't fit with what they thought he was going to do. Their very discussion revealed their ongoing rejection of the direct words of Jesus. This is the disciples rejecting it. They were stuck dreaming of status and victory, and they just couldn't listen correctly because they were so consumed with this political point. Peter specifically should have been the one redirecting the conversations the disciples were having to what Jesus had already clearly stated, because Jesus was selecting him to lead. He was still not on the same page with Jesus. There's a famous author, Mark Twain, who once said, it ain't those parts of the Bible I can't understand that bother me. It's the parts I do understand. He was trying to say, it's hard to follow Jesus. He also said one other time, many people follow Jesus, but few follow him all the way. That is our struggle today. People are okay following Jesus, but not always following Jesus all the way. And it was also Peter's struggle back then. It was the disciples' struggle back then. It's not unique to us. So that was kind of the setup of what was going on in Peter's mind about all of these things. And then in Mark 14 that we read, Peter said to Jesus, even if everyone else deserts you, I never will. Now, we know what's happened. We know he's going to deny. And right before he does all this, he says to Jesus, I would never. This is a serious case of overconfidence. The Bible calls that something else. The Bible calls it pride. You see, Peter was now sliding, and he was sliding quickly. Peter perceived himself to be indestructible, a force to be reckoned with. He thought of himself as better than others. He was the one who barked really loud, but it turns out he didn't have much of a spiritual bite. His words were bold, but his heart was nowhere near as pure as he thought. His inner self had issues, and those inner issues are about to be revealed. Then Jesus returned and found the disciples asleep. He said to Peter, Simon, why are you asleep? Couldn't you watch even 1 hour? What's the slide? What's happened? First was pride. You know what this is? This is called sloppiness. He was sloppy. Falling asleep might not seem like a big deal, but by falling asleep, he missed the prayer time. And the prayer would have prepared him for the upcoming test, but he slept through the preparation time. And so he wasn't prepared. This is also the moment when Jesus emotionally needed the most support. His lack of attention to detail is a good clue that Peter's going to fail later. He let his flesh choose the outcome instead of letting the Spirit of God choose the outcome. And that is still our struggle today. The Spirit might be willing, but the flesh is weak. something that we wrestle with. The difference is let's not let the flesh make the decision of what our outcome is going to be. Meanwhile, Peter followed him at a distance. There it is again, at the distance, and went right into the high priest courtyard. At a distance. Why is Peter so far from Jesus? Is this cowardice? What is it? Whatever it isn't good to be at a distance from Jesus, because life is always better when you are up front and close with Jesus. When you follow Jesus, listen carefully. When you follow Jesus, you got to get right up close. Like right up close in Jesus' face. What are you doing, Jesus? You're moving to where are you going, Jesus? Jesus, I got to come with you, Jesus. He's moving to the left, you're moving to the left, you're moving to the right, you're moving to the right. Is this a good idea for my life, Jesus? Listen, if you can't smell Jesus' breath, you are not close enough to Jesus. That was so good. We have this little dog at my house. 5 pounds, long-haired Chihuahua named Rico. Rico. Several times a day, he climbs up on me and he stretches. He stretches on me. He wants some scratchies and he wants some snackies and he smells my breath. He will climb up and sit on my shoulder to make sure that he goes where I go. I'm telling you, look at that cute little dog. That cute little dog. He'll get right up, right nose to nose. He'll sniff my mouth. He'll try to look inside my mouth. That's how close you got to get to Jesus. If you don't want to slip, that's how close you got to get to Jesus. If it makes you uncomfortable, you still got to get a little closer to Jesus. If you're like, I don't know what people will think, you got to get closer to Jesus. You got to stop worrying about what other people think about what you think. It's not for me at this point in my life. I don't care what other people think about my relationship with Jesus. But sometimes I still think things in my own head. I got to get out my own way so I can get closer to Jesus. In verse 54, we see the beginning of the betrayal of Jesus, of Peter to Jesus. There he sat with the guards, warming himself by the fire. It's so easy to miss, but why in the world was he with the guards, warming himself by the fire? Why wasn't he with the other disciples? Because he had slipped. Why wasn't he with the right people? Because he was falling, and he was falling fast. You see, if he was all that, if he was so brave, at least he should have been with the fellas planning a prison break or something. But instead, there he is, warming himself in the enemy's camp. Just to be clear, the guards were the enemy of the Jewish people. They were living under Roman occupation. And the enemy guard is where Peter decides to go hang out. Goes and hangs out with them. He was literally warming himself by the fires of the world at the fires in the enemy's camp. Nobody made him go. He went there all by himself. And when you warm yourself at the fires of the enemy's camp, you will end up doing things you never, ever, ever thought you would do. When you warm yourself by those fires of the world. What was Peter thinking? Why was he literally in the enemy's camp? My best guess is he was confused. He was conflicted. He was depressed. He was having a moment. Whatever it was that got him there, he found himself in a place he ought not to have been. And when you are in places where you ought not to have been, there are consequences that come with that. Satan didn't just want to destroy Peter, he also wants to destroy you and everything you love. He wants to destroy your kids and your influence and your grandkids and your service. And if you insist on hanging out by the fires of this world, you will find yourself betraying everything you hold dear. But the fires of the world are attractive. bright lights and fancy sounds, the illusions of joy, the crowds over here, the large crowds are the seemingly easier path. Yet all that glitters is not gold. And sin will always take you further than you wanted to go. The fires of the world are addictive. There's an old commercial, like way back before half of you were born. But there's this old commercial about potato chips. And it says, bet you can't eat just one. Turns out they're right. You can't just eat one. You know, one time will never be enough. It never will. The fires of this world reach in and promise with the promise of wholeness, but a promise of wholeness that somehow leaves you more empty than when you first started. We live in a very interesting moment in history where when many people have determined that to let feelings and their confusion be their compass. So their feelings have become their guide. Their confusion has become their guide. And it shows up like this in our culture. If it feels good, do it. Follow your heart, because Disney said so. Because the heart wants what the heart wants, after all. The Bible's loaded with these stories as warnings. David, Bathsheba, Samson desired Delilah. Solomon desired 700 foreign wives and 300 concubines. Peter desired safety in the courtyard around the fire. The overwhelming counsel of Scripture is to guard your heart. Be careful of your own desires. Navigate through confusion rather than embrace confusion. Because sin will keep you longer than you wanted to stay. The fires of this world are also annihilating. It destroys not just you, but also the things you love and the things around you. The fires of this world employ a total devastation approach. And once you engage, they implant themselves to deploy and do as much damage as possible to you or anything you love. We know this, that when a king fails, it harms the nation. When a spiritual leader fails, it harms the body. When a parent fails, it harms the family. There's always a consequence because your life matters. Sin will make you pay more than you wanted to pay. When you are confused and conflicted and hanging out around the fires of the world, you do things you never, ever thought you could do. Peter never thought he could possibly betray Jesus. But in verse 68, I don't know what you're talking about. Verse 70, but Peter denied it again. Verse 71, Peter swore, I curse on me if I'm lying. I don't know what this man is talking about. The man who Jesus personally picked and was personally mentoring to literally change the world turns his back on Jesus, betrays him. And Peter weeps. Listen, if you've failed in life more than you could have ever imagined that you would do, if the concept of being betrayed speaks to you, or if you've betrayed someone else, hang in there. Don't give up yet. The story is not over. Immediately after the denial of Peter, the author tells us the account of the crucifixion of Jesus. So Mark 14, Peter denies Jesus. Mark 15 is the account of the crucifixion of Jesus. And then in Mark 16, we turn a positive corner. And as I read it, pay attention to the person that is highlighted. Very early on Sunday morning, just at sunrise, they went to the tomb. On the way, they were asking each other, who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb? But as they arrived, they looked up and saw the stone, which was large, had already been rolled aside. When they entered the tomb, they saw a young man clothed in white robes sitting on the right side. The women were shocked, but the angel said, "Don't be alarmed. You're looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead. Look, this is where they laid his body. Now go and tell his disciples, including Peter, that Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there just as he told you before he died." Now go and tell his disciples, including Peter. I don't want you to miss this. This is after the betrayal. This is after his most deeply problematic moment in following Jesus. And the very first instructions given after the resurrection are, go make sure Peter knows. Go tell Peter. Why? Because he's got to make sure that Peter knows it's going to be okay. He isn't going to have to live with the shame of this any longer. He isn't going to have a scarlet letter of betrayal tattooed on the forehead or chest of his life. As the worship team comes up, it's as if God is setting the agenda for the ages for us to understand today. No matter how far you have fallen, no matter how much you have compromised, no matter how many times you have betrayed Jesus, no matter how many times you've denied him, no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, no matter how long you've been there, Jesus wants to make sure that you know now and forever that he sacrificed everything for you. He said, I paid the penalty for your crimes. While they were spitting on me and piercing me and pounding a nail through my hands, while they stood there mocking me, while they rejected my love, I did it so I could be restored with you. I did it so I could be restored to them. I did it so our dream of a kingdom greater than the kingdoms of this world could be fulfilled. I did it so injustice and death and sickness and brokenness might all be overcome. I did it so that you, my child, my friend, could have all the ugly in your life made beautiful. Jesus made the sacrifice. Jesus took the pain so that I could be made right with him. Because Jesus also made that sacrifice so that you could be made right with him. And remember, as Peter learned, even when we are unfaithful, Jesus remains faithful to us. It's the critical point of the story. It's not the betrayal of Peter. We all, if we're honest, should grasp exactly what Peter did. He betrayed Jesus. We've betrayed him too. The point of the story is not the betrayal. It's the restoration. It's the restoration that Jesus provides for us through the cross. Would you stand with me as we close? God's grace takes what is unforgivable and makes it forgivable. So today, allow the forgiveness of Christ to take hold of you today. Receive the forgiveness of Christ. Expose your brokenness and your ugliness to Jesus today. Receive his grace because he wants to replace our ugliness for his beauty. So today, as we close, the altars are open. If you'd like to talk to Jesus about this, please do.